Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. Now, there's been an exciting piece of archaeological discovery, which is one of the great joys of being Catholic, that science continues to catch up and prove the wonders of divine revelation in the fullness of the faith. And one such example is the location, quite possibly the location, of the Council of Nicaea. Joining me to talk about the council, his visit to this area, and of course, his own journey in the Catholic faith and why ecumenical councils are so crucial is my dear friend Steve Ray. Now, Steve is an apologist extraordinaire. He is a prolific author and defender of the Catholic faith, CatholicConvert.com, FootprintsOfGod.com, and he leads pilgrimages across the world with Corporate Travel Services, Ave Maria Radio, and Footprints of God. And Steve, thank you for joining us. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. Just home from Ireland and packing up and getting ready to go to Lourdes and Fatima with another group.
Steve, did you pick up an Irish accent while you were there?
It's easy to do that. And talking to you, I pick up a Malaysian accent. Oh,
then you don't want to spend too much time with me. But
can I tell you a quick story?
Oh, sure thing, yes.
On our way home from Ireland. This is a sad story, but it just shows how being open to the Lord works. We were sitting on our seat in the plane, and a lady came by, couldn't get her suitcase up, so I helped her get it up, and she was so grateful. And she noticed my cross, which I wear all the time for the very purpose that it served here. And she said, "Oh, I love that." And I said, "Thank you, ma'am." I said, "I want everybody to know I'm a Catholic and I know what's true." She said, "That's so nice." And she was all excited about it. And then afterwards, I helped her get her suitcase down and she said a few more words and then she left. I got an email from her later that day, Marcus, and it said, "Dear Mr. Ray, I looked you up on the internet after talking to you and I realized, my husband and I, who you were, and I want you to know how important that meeting was." She said, "I was on my way home from Ireland 3 days early. I had to scramble to get a flight and I ended up, God put me next to you for a reason." She said, "I just got an email today that my son had shot himself and I'm going home for the funeral." And she said, "And God put you and your wife there to comfort me just by the fact that you wore that cross and you were kind and you talked to me." And she said, "It reminded me of God's goodness, even though I'm going home for such a horrific event. But you and your wife made it all a blessing in a sense." And then she wrote back to me again the next day, even elaborated more. My point is that we really need to, when we're traveling or whatever else we do, practice the Nicene Creed. Let people know we're Christians. If you do something good for people, let them know it's because you're a Catholic, and then you can be a blessing to people. I'm still reeling, wrapping my mind around what happened there on that plane.
It's funny, Steve, you've been in ministry for so many years now, and I think you'd be the first to say you most often don't hear the fruits of the numerous good works that you do and the seeds that you plant. So having stories like this, I imagine, is an amazing affirmation to the call that God has placed in your life.
Yep, and I only share it with you to encourage other people to do the same. Mm-hmm. Let people know you're Catholic. Step out of your comfort zone. Help people. Let them know you help them because you're a Catholic. Wear something that lets people know who you are. And that's the only reason I do it, as an exhortation and an encouragement to other people to do the same and be available to God, to be his minister while we're out in the world. Anyway, that gets us back to the Nicene Creed, which is why I do all of those things, Marcus. I want to start this way. I believe in one God, the Father, the Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, of all things visible and invisible, seen and unseen. Now, I believe in one Lord Jesus Christ, the only begotten Son of God, born of the Father before all ages, God from God, light from light, true God from true God, begotten, not made, consubstantial with the Father. We say those words with such lightness, but those words were hammered out by men who were willing to even get in fights with each other, travel across the Roman Empire to come up with these words that were hammered out on an anvil with a sledgehammer. And those words that we say so casually every Sunday and other times are really profound, and they're the heart of what we're going to be talking about today, and how those words got here and where we got them from, because those words are not in the Bible. Those words are Catholic tradition. They are teachings of the church. And as a Protestant, I didn't come up with that. I copied it from the Catholic Church.
In fact, what you highlight is so crucial that because these things are not in the Bible, it was necessary for the wisdom of God to guide the bishops to grant us the clear language and guidance for thinking rightly and believing rightly about our faith.
Yep. I'm on Catholic Answers Live tonight, and our topic is tradition. So this just dovetails with what I'm doing the show with you and Catholic Answers Live tonight on the tradition, because that's what it really is. The great heresies of the Catholic faith, or the Christian faith, the great heresies, especially of the first centuries, was who and what is God, who and what is Jesus, and who and what is the Holy Spirit. It took 500 years for the councils and the synods and the popes to hammer that all out, to put it in a simple form like the Nicene Creed that we can recite and take for granted, actually, but it's one of the great treasures that we have. And Marcus, you as a Protestant too, in your former life, we didn't come up with this from the Bible alone. The Bible alone never uses the word Trinity. It never uses the word hypostatic union, or God from God, light from light, or consubstantial with the Father. These are all words, theological and philosophical words and phrases that the church clearly defined, so that we can so that the simple person, let's say this, works out on a pig farm back in Asia Minor, never saw anything beautiful, only smells the pig farm all day, and is uneducated, but he can memorize this creed, and he can tell the most learned man in the world what he knows is true. That's the beauty of this, and it was the church that came up with it.
And in fact, like you rightly highlight too, if not for the wisdom of these councils, Christians would still be, like you said earlier, men were willing to come to blows over these very important things about who God is, who Jesus Christ is, and who the Holy Spirit is.
I wish bishops still had that passion. I wish that bishops today still had that passion to have councils and take it so seriously. The Council of Nicaea, just imagine, this is what we're going to talk about. It's the first ecumenical council. It took place in 325. And what's special about that? We're celebrating the 1700 years of that council. 1700 years. United States is only 250 years this year. We're talking 17. We belong to the oldest existing institution in the world, the Catholic Church. There's no office that's been longer than the chair of Peter. And so we are celebrating when we talk about this. The first half we'll talk about this, the creed, and what happened there, and then the second half about the new discoveries and so on, and my trip over there, because we went there. But it was in 325, and it was under Pope Sylvester the First, under Emperor Constantine. This council took place in 325. So what's another date that's near that shows us how incredible this is? Christianity was illegal, and people were persecuted and killed and deprived of their property and their families for being Christian. And only in 313 did Christianity become legalized by Constantine. And we're talking only 12 years later that Constantine himself calls this ecumenical council with bishops from around the world, and he begs them all to come and to please find unity on this idea of who Jesus is. This is only 12 years after Christianity became legalized. So the 318 bishops, that's what Athanasius said, is 318. Eusebius says more than 250, but I like Athanasius. He's my patron saint, and I trust him more than Eusebius on this one. But he was there, and if you imagine these people coming from all over the world, from Persia and Rome, just think of the traveling conditions, the horrific travel, and yet these bishops who had been persecuted, many come maimed and blind, came to that council.
For the sake of coming to a true defense of the teachings of Christianity. We're going to continue on the other side of the break talking with Steve Ray about the discovery of the location of the Council of Nicaea. This is exciting stuff. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter. Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Marcus Peter. I'm talking with Steve Ray. He's an apologist, he is an author, defender of the Catholic faith, pilgrimage leader, and he'll be on Catholic Answers today talking about tradition as well. And today on our program, he is joining us to talk about the finding of the location where the Council of Nicaea took place. And one of the things that you and I have talked about, but you've been very clear about, Steve, is that so much of early church ecumenical council history took place in modern-day Turkey.
The first 8 ecumenical councils took place in Turkey. Nicaea 1, Constantinople 1, Ephesus, Chaldean, Chalcedon, Constantinople 1, 2 and 3, Nicaea 2, and Constantinople 4. There's the first 8. They're held pretty much universally by the Catholic, Orthodox, Protestant churches. And those all took place in Turkey of today. So I say that if Christianity was born in Israel, it grew up in Turkey. That's the way I say it. And by the way, we're taking a group there in October if you want to go with us. We're going to be going to Ephesus, where the third ecumenical council took place, and we're going to be discussing all of that there. But yes, Turkey is so amazing. And, the sad thing is they don't realize what they have because they're 99% Muslims, and everything has to be seen through the eyes of Islam. And that's just, they don't really understand the treasures that they have there. So now, one last thing about this whole council is, have you ever heard, and I'm not asking you because I know you have, but other people, that, Marcus, that doesn't make one iota of difference. People hear that phrase, they have no idea what it means. Now, it doesn't make one iota of difference, Marcus, and you know it. This is kind of how you would say it. But the whole idea is that the whole argument was on this big word, homoousios or homoiousios.
Yep.
The one has the letter I in the middle of it, Homoiousios, homoiousios. That little I is the Greek letter iota. Mm-hmm. With that letter in there, it means that Jesus is of similar substance with the Father, but not co-eternal. The word homoousios without that iota means that he is of consubstantial, co-eternal, co-equal, and of the same substance. And that's, we just got back from Ireland, and I showed people a clover. We picked it at the Rock of Cashel, where he explained it to the king and converted him. And the clover is one leaf, but it has 3 lobes. That lobe is not that lobe, and that lobe is distinct from that lobe, but all lobes are of the same substance as part of the leaf. So he showed him that. This is what the whole argument was about, whether Jesus was part as a Trinity, as he was co-equal, co-substantial, co-eternal with the Father, or whether he was just kind of Arius was the enemy in that council, saying that Jesus was really a created being. That's what they wanted to say. But anyway, enough of that. We talked about what it is. But in 2001, my wife and I were working on our Footprints of God series. And one of the things I wanted to do was go to see where this council took place. And we went there in 2001, and they showed us a church, Hagia Sophia, it's called in Turkish, which means a church of wisdom, Sophia. And they call it a museum now, musisi, because all the churches that were like historical, they can't be called churches, they have to be museums. Hagia Sophia, the great church, the largest for 1,000 years in Christianity, it was a museum until they turned it now back into a mosque, which is heartbreaking. But they consider them museums. You can't pray there, you can't have mass or anything else. So we went and saw this building right on the waterfront of Iznik. Now, Iznik is about 2 hours drive from Istanbul south, and it's a 5-hour drive from Iznik to Ephesus. So Turkey's about the size of Texas, just to give a reference point. So we left Istanbul, we drove around and came down to Iznik, which is on Lake Iznik, and it was on the western shore. And they showed us this church, and they said, this is where the council took place here and so on. But in 2014, and this is getting to where we're going now, they hadn't known this before. And in 2014, they discovered from aerial footage that there was the remains of a church 2 meters. That's about 6 to 10 feet of water. And they discovered it in the water. And then they said, this must be the church. And they actually did discover the right place. So that was underwater. But recently, the water has subsided, and that has exposed this foundations of this church. And now they started digging below it, and they realized there's another church below it that's even earlier. So that this is the church where the 318 bishops came to, and the site has the church on above it was called the Church of the Holy Fathers. Why? Well, because the Holy Fathers all came there. 318 bishops. They came there, and that's why they built this church in honor of them. And so they started to dig, and they found below it another church was called the Church of Neophytos. That was built earlier. And then they realized that what happened here was that the original council was in that church. It was built prior to the council arriving. And then there was an earthquake. And then, so after the earthquake, they rebuilt a bigger church, and they called it the Church of the Holy Fathers to commemorate the bishops and the fathers of the church who had the council underneath in the first church that was there. So this is the great discovery that they've had. And I'm thinking of going back just to see this.
The stunning reality of it, Steve, is that this is something that you and I have studied as a part of our historical heritage, and to now see more and more of archaeology proving what church history has always known to be true, it gives me goosebumps.
Well, it does me too, because I had somebody one time that said to me, I can live with your Nicene Creed. I don't have problem with most of it. The only problem I really have a line with is the line that said, and he suffered under Pontius Pilate. And I said, why do you object to that? He says, well, because with that phrase, you're trying to tie your creed into real history. That's exactly what we're doing.
Yeah.
The whole point is we're saying that there was a procurator named Pontius Pilate, and he really existed, and he's the one that put Jesus to death on the cross. And yes, it is historical. And don't think that the rest of the creed is all just kind of some spiritual gobbledygook. The whole creed is historical. It's all metaphysically true. And that line ties it right into the world history. So what ends up happening is you also now find that all of these kind of things tie into history. Where did the council meet that decided that Jesus was Homoousian? It was right there in Iznik, Turkey. Iznik, back in those today, is Nicaea of the earlier years. Once the Ottoman Empire took it, they renamed most of the cities. Like Constantinople, they renamed it to Istanbul. And Nicaea, they renamed it to Iznik. But there it is. That's history. You can go visit it. You can imagine those bishops coming from Persia, which is Iran of today, all the way across Europe, and all coming together. How did they even get there, Marcus? Just imagine that. Many of these are older guys. Some of them had been maimed during the persecutions, and 318 of them arrived, and they're ready to fight and decide and to argue about this. It was important enough to not leave until we have this concluded. And God bless them for doing that, because we have the creed today, which we all hold to be true. And you can go back and see the very place now where they did that.
And yet we complain about the inconvenience of going to Mass because we've got a soccer game on Sunday.
Yep, and the ham might burn in the oven if the preacher keeps preaching too long.
So this discovery, but also the Nicene Creed, we've got about 2 minutes left in the segment, Steve. As a convert, to a fellow convert, but also to all of our listeners, there's such a necessity for us to love with all our hearts this heritage that we've been given. Share with us about that.
Well, we certainly do, because it's a rich creed that we've been given, and it summarizes the faith. You have many, many denominations and heresies. The Jehovah's Witnesses, the Mormons say they read the same Bible we do. The oneness Pentecostals, they all read the same Bible. They come with totally different ideas of who Jesus is. They deny the Trinity, everything. But they're saying they're reading the same book we are. But what happened is the councils, the keys were given to Peter, the Pope, and he's the one that actually called this along with the emperor, and he's the one that ratified it. He had two legates, like legal representatives who were there for the Pope, Sylvester. And when they came up with this conclusion, it was the church that had the authority by God to bind and loose and to make these decisions. That's not Bible alone. It's magisterium and Bible and tradition. And all three of those are like a three-legged stool. They're all required. And here we see the beauty of it. Even Protestants and Orthodox and others agree with the Catholic Council of that church. There were no Protestants at the time. Pastor Billy Bob was not there at the council. This was the Catholic bishops from around the world, and they came to this conclusion, and it was ratified by the Pope, and we have all held to that as the doctrine of our faith ever since, and it's one of the great treasures. I have made up my mind, Marcus, that I hope I never have to be a martyr, but I've memorized that creed so I can say it in my sleep, because I've determined, I told my wife and kids that if I'm ever burned at the stake or shot or whatever they do, I'm going to go down shouting the Nicene Creed at the top of my lips.
Okay, you've given me an idea as to what to do. I thought I was going to yell the words, Jesus, I love you, but this is a very powerful way to declare our love for Jesus. Steve, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time and your wisdom.
God bless you, Marcus.
God bless you. My guest has been Steve Ray. He's a dear friend, a mentor figure, and he's an apologist. He's a man who loves the Lord dearly and loves his church and his magisterium dearly. And therefore, we can express true, sincere, heartfelt gratitude for the Nicene Creed and the recent discovery of the church wherein the Council of Nicaea took place. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter.